Hello Pyramid Energy. I just recorded this video. I think it's a bit long, but I just want to say before I plug it in that there's an absolutely beautiful Rumi oracle message at the end that ties it all together so beautifully. And I think that the nature of this discussion is just reflective of the nature of the discussion that we have internally as we try to survive in this relationship world as intuitives, empaths, people on a path of expansion and personal growth. And so I hope you enjoy it. It feels very personal to me, and I'm still going to share it. Sending you so much love. First and foremost, all gratitude to the divine for placing me here and now, for guidance, protection, and all blessings, big and small. Hello, Pyramid Energy. I hope everyone is well. This is a discussion, not a reading. And it's one of those discussions where this conversation's been happening, not even in the background. Sometimes it comes right to the front. But I've been finding it going a bit circular with no answers. And so I thought, let me bring it here. A lot of healing has happened for me here on the channel. It feels like, my healing is sort of somewhat tied to the channel. My voice, naturally, this has healed me. This really has. And this topic might be a bit of it needs a trigger warning. Let me put it that way. Just because I'm here to talk about relationships. And the reason I'm giving a trigger warning before I even go in is because I've never felt more single. I've never felt more single. That means physically I'm not in a relationship with anyone, and that means spiritually it feels like everyone's been wiped off the chart. Not in a good way or bad way. The only masculine I currently have a relationship with is the one inside of me, which very much exists. Very protective, very clear-minded, has helped me to do many things the more space I've given him, them, I don't know, okay? And I mean, so much that I find this masculine shows up in various relationships of mine. So there is a place that I've found that I need to heal where my masculine oversteps another person's boundaries. Out of my love for them, I've had to recognize that I need to give certain people space to make their own mistakes and to find their own way. So, relationships. What's been happening is that the more I discuss this with myself, us, all of us, past versions are involved in the conversation, future versions are involved in the conversation, but not giving too much because apparently the present self has to work through this to an extent. The trigger warning comes because I'm not tied to anything. And so some of the things I say might be triggering for someone who finds themselves in a relationship or not in a relationship, and maybe certain ideals that they've formed in their mind. I don't know. So this is just trigger warning because I'm not going to stop myself from sharing my thoughts. I've been listening to the song from The Notebook. I think I first came across it in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. The song's called Feels Like Home. It feels like home to me. It feels like home to me. That song, I've always connected it to the relationship space, just like all other love songs. But I've been playing it recently because I feel it inside myself. I feel it inside myself in this place that I can only describe as love, this place I've found, a feeling of alignment. There is always still a sense of coming back to balance. I think that has to happen. We have to move slightly out of balance to grow. You can't just grow perfectly. I don't think that exists. This place of union, touching union and being in it again and then coming back into balance. I've been reflecting on what this means, having this feeling of feeling like I've found home. And the movie The Notebook, I realized that song, Feels Like Home, actually was the soundtrack. It was part of the soundtrack to The Notebook. And so I went and read the story of The Notebook. And I've already forgotten their names, but basically, guy meets girl, and they embark on this really long, drawn-out love story where her parents disapprove of him and his parents approve of her, love her. And she then engages in this push and pull with herself, I suppose arriving at the place where she knows what she loves, she knows who she loves, and I think you should go read the story. I mean the Wikipedia version of the movie, or just watch the movie, which I'm going to do. But this conversation was just shooting out of me. I think that the way I see it is he obviously being the masculine, she being her being the feminine, but also this other dynamic of her parents representing what society expects of her, all her responsibilities, and her pursuit of a love with him almost being like the pursuit for purpose, the pursuit of one's sole purpose and calling, which does, like their relationship, it comes to you early, you remember it early, and then there are all these things, all these contracts that you form in your life that you feel the need and the pressure to fulfill, and the running and the chasing in the relationship with yourself, essentially. I touched on this in the reading that I posted yesterday, the importance of the relationship with oneself and these 4 pillars. I don't have them here. Ooh, I should remember them, but I'm human. One was truth, one was honesty, one was communication, and what is the 4th one? I don't remember, but it's basically the importance of the relationship with oneself. Which brings me to this thing I've been grappling with. Once you have really nurtured and cultivated this relationship with yourself and found yourself in this balance, and you finally feel like you're home with yourself and totally in love with yourself, okay? And so even in those moments where you're slightly distanced from yourself, you kind of know where you're going when you go home again, because life happens and we have to leave home, we have to do stuff. Where does that leave us on the spectrum of like codependent versus independent, and then there's interdependent, and then there's intradependence? I've been coming up with all these terms. I mean, they're all online, but I've been wondering, where is the right balance? Like, what are we actually searching for in relationships? Because what I don't want to do is become so independent, which is how I feel right now, so independent that there is no room for anyone. And this is kind of like, it's feeling like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because, I've had my fair share of relationships. The fact that I'm not in them is evidence that they were not where I was meant to be. They were not good for me, or I was not good in them. Let's put it that way. And I've worked through a lot of healing. I've found that the best healing I've gone through has been through separating myself physically from the space of relationships. Not that they are that forthcoming, to be honest. Thankfully, whatever. But a lot of it has had to happen internally, spiritually, because there are these people, these characters that come onto the stage and, you know, they show up and you've got to work through those too. So it's almost been healing in private without creating a whole lot of physical structures around the relationship that I then can't run from. I mean, I'm not saying the goal is to run, but can't get out of, because that is real, you know? Trying to get out of a physical relationship is some serious healing. It's not funny. I'm sorry. It's not funny. I'm going to laugh at anything I want to laugh at, because one of the things about me is I've found that my best humor actually has come from being in the dark, has come from my darkest times. And I feel I've earned it. I feel I've earned my right to express my darkest humor, because if you can't laugh at it, then maybe there's something that you don't want to see about it. Maybe. I did give a trigger warning, huh? You know, codependence, the online definition, it says here, an unhealthy dependence on relationships. The codependent will do anything to hold on to a relationship, to avoid the feeling of abandonment, an extreme need for approval and recognition, a sense of guilt when asserting themselves, a compelling need to control others. Okay? I find it hard to believe that we haven't all been there. I mean, it's tricky stuff. And even if, for anyone who hasn't been in a relationship, because I mean, this exists, you haven't been in a relationship, this thing here, this definition, I feel still applies, because a relationship is the place where we learn how to undo these things, or we learn that we need to undo these things. And unfortunately, I think that the way relationships have been sold to us is an illusion. I think that the way relationships has been sold to us is an illusion. And it creates this illusion, like you have this ideal picture, let's say, in terms of how I used to watch The Notebook, the movie. You have this picture of this greatest love, you know, and that you should go to any extent to achieve this greatest love. Okay, I still believe in the greatest love, okay? I do. But I'm just saying that this whole picture is painted of it to the extreme where if you find yourself in something of a healthy relationship, you might actually feel like you've compromised on something. You know, like when it's too quiet, I don't know. When everything looks fine, I don't know. It's like a... This is the thing, because again, I think this discussion feels like wearing sunscreen. It's like, who knows whether you really have to wear it? You know, I have darker skin, so I'm at an advantage here, I'm aware. But like, maybe it's one of those things where in the long run, you'll be happy you had the discussion with yourself, you know? Can't hurt. And then all this healing that's happened in terms of codependency has led me to a place where all the way across to the opposite side of the spectrum, where I'm realizing that maybe I'm too independent, because now there's no room for any kind of relationship, which leaves me asking myself, what am I looking for? So then I started playing with, okay, let's look at the definition of independent. It says here, independence in a relationship means maintaining your own identity, interests, and social connections while still being part of a couple. So for me, I don't know how you maintain your own identity when you're part of a couple. I mean, we go together. We're a couple. Oh, Khunzi, you mean such and such's person? Like, I don't get it. I don't get this definition. It means nothing to me, to be honest. Interests as well. Maintaining your own interests. Yes, that's something that I'd like to be able to do in a relationship. Maintaining social connections. Yes, but I don't know, because what is life that's shared? Like, where do these things overlap? Where do we have our friends? I don't get this stuff while still being part of a couple. This stuff is very tricky. And I think, you know, this last part can lead to a greater understanding and respect between them. I'm all for that. I'm all for that. I just think that these things need to be thrashed out, because what you don't want to do is find yourself talking to someone, talking stage, figuring stuff out. Again, another thing, I think we're all highly intuitive. And so there's so many conversations that happen in the talking stage. There's the conversation between the two humans, and then there's the conversation between the two humans that the physical humans might not get to. Very triggering, this part. And then there's the conversation that happens between Khunze and higher self Khunze, like, you know, you see what you see, you can see it. Are you going to say it? And then like the grappling with, what do I say? What don't I say? The same stuff's happening on the other side. This relationship space becomes deeply dynamic at some point of one's own personal growth. And I think that's possibly why if I search on YouTube, I won't find the answers to the stuff that I want to talk about here. It's very tricky. It's very tricky. It's very triggering. It's very triggering. Just even having the conversation is easy on my own, but as soon as you plus one, the numbers are not numbering, you know? Then it led me to this idea of, what's the next one? Interdependent. Interdependent, let us look it up. Interdependent. This one for me was the worst. Interdependent comes from the Latin word inter, meaning among, between, okay? Of two or more people or things dependent on each other. That is, it's a no for me. It is codependence, essentially. Depending on someone, you depend on them, they depend on you, therefore you depend on each other. That's codependence. I suppose it can happen when it's one-sided, in which case, tricky situation for whoever's there. I suppose I've been there. Okay, let's stop and talk about that. I have been there. I think that a relationship, let's say like with a soulmate or someone in the dream world where you feel you're in a relationship, physically you've never spoken, and then you start basing a lot of your plans on this relationship coming to pass in real life. I've been there, where you start to base a lot of your decisions and your plans, even creatively. I've done that. Like, oh, when this person comes around, then we can do this together, we can do that together. And that actually creates a stronger attachment. And you know how I feel about attachments is that when you have too many attachments, you're inhibiting your growth, your expansion. What if you can't actually see the future? And so if you are basing your plans and your actions on this whole area that relies on someone, there's a block. And I have found the biggest leap I have ever taken has been when I've been willing to wipe the slate clean, completely. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. I like to describe it as I did something. I set off an atomic bomb on my whole sacral chakra. And I didn't actually say that day that I recorded the video where I was dealing with a lot of grief, creatively, and, you know, in terms of this flame conversation and all these things. And I then researched, like, what's the benefit of an atomic bomb? And because I had already set it off. And so then I was crying and I was grieving and I wasn't sure what I was grieving and I wasn't sure why I set off an atomic bomb on my creative center. But it was because I felt like it had been over-invaded. I felt like it had been over-invaded. When I looked up the meaning of and benefits of an atomic bomb, it said, you know, obviously there's a huge discussion around atomic bombs and how it is tragic when one goes off, and cruel because there are many casualties. But the benefit is that you're able to take back your territory. And so that's what I did. I took back my territory. I set off an atomic bomb. That meant everyone I've ever wanted to be with was like wiped out. And everyone who was there, gone. Including my work here on Pyramid Energy. And that's when I started the process of adding back the stuff that I do want there. And now again, so this is how I've landed here, is that in the relationship space, in this prospective relationship space, I'm finding I need to prepare and decide what is it that I want to add back. Because now here's the trickiness. The tricky part comes in where I'm an empath. And so when I interact with someone, and this has happened with the audience as well. I mean, there's no, when you are reading energy and really wanting to immerse yourself, the separation sort of disintegrates. And again, when you want to be open in a relationship and feel the feels, you've got to let the separation disintegrate a bit. Otherwise, how am I going to tell what's going on? I don't want to just use my mind when it comes to love. I don't want to only use my mind. I know I'm doing that here, but I think I'm learning, I'm preparing, I'm wearing sunscreen. I'm putting on my sunscreen before I get burnt out there, because I don't have a lot left in me in this arena, okay? So especially the reason I don't, let me just address the reason I don't. The reason I don't is because my work is so important to me. And this sense of self-love, this feeling that I've arrived at is so important to me. And so if I find that maybe it means, I just think it's dangerous for me to decide, maybe I won't have a relationship until I'm 70. I don't want to decide that. I'm open to it now. I'm open to it. But you get that feeling, you go out with people and then everyone has a person. You want a person. Tug of war. So I was looking up I think we're there now. Intradependent is the next part that I got to, because I'm playing with all these terms to figure out where do I fall. Intradependence means something exists due to necessary relationships within a place. It can also refer to how one thing is the result of another. The term intradependence came to me because I was like, maybe I'm describing myself wrong. Maybe I'm not independent, because independent sounds so don't need anyone else, and I've got to recognize that to an extent, this human wants another human at some point. I would like another human at some point. And I think I'm assessing what kind of human would this be? Or what does this human need to be able to accommodate in order to consider being with me? I need to decide what these things mean first. I can't go there in a mess of all these thoughts and all these dynamics playing out in my mind, and then you're still dealing with the energy. And so that's the trickiness when it comes to being an empath, is as soon as you step out of home and you go somewhere, meet someone, start talking to someone, it's hard to separate when you are feeling what they are feeling from what you're feeling. That's very difficult, finding that balance. And so I think it does need a level of mind work to kind of frame what it might look like, so that you don't find yourself feeling what other people are feeling. And this has happened to me. This has happened to me where you can actually pick up the anxiety of the other person and feel it as your own and not realize it. And then you gaslight yourself because there are all these feelings, and they can actually create your experience for you without knowing it. And I don't want my experience to be created by another person. And maybe there will be a point where I'm ready to co-create, but these are the things that I'd like to iron out before I enter that co-creative space. Because naturally, in the relationship, I will return to home, because there's no place like home. There isn't. I haven't found one yet. And so I might find myself returning home, and I might find some new truths at home. How do I reconcile those with the other person? how do healthy relationships work? How do healthy relationships actually work? It's a conundrum. It's a conundrum. I came across a different term when I was looking at intradependence. And the reason I moved a little bit out of intradependence is because intradependence for me is like the reason you even like me, the reason why I even appeal to you is because of my intradependence, is because of this relationship that I have with myself. And that means you don't have room to compromise that. Otherwise, you unknowingly turn me into something that does not appeal to you. This is the danger for me in relationships. And again, we could move to the other extreme where I consider perhaps being with someone that is at the same level of healing that I'm at, who loves themselves to the same extent. I think that person is stuck at the same conversation that I'm at right now. That's what I think. It's a bit of an epiphany that just hit me. I think that's where they are. Because if I'm realistic, if I look at things practically, that person is alone like me. That person is alone because a lot of people out there are so unhealed and aren't even interested in the healing. Well, are not showing interest in the healing. Let's put it that way. That was a bit judgy. I apologize. Are not showing interest in healing, which means then they have to then resign themselves to swimming in that water, the water of codependence, independence, all of that, which is, here we hear, considering how a person who has a really healthy relationship with themselves comes into a relationship with another human. And what does that relationship look like? I came across another term, autonomy. I came across this term when I was looking at independence. Again, independence wasn't enough for me. And I found autonomy. It says, autonomy in a relationship is the ability to make choices freely, feel authentic, and act in accordance with one's values and wants. It's a fundamental human need that's essential for psychological health, motivation, and individual well-being. Under there, I found in an autonomous relationship, partners have mutual respect, support, and openness. They understand and respect each other's boundaries, embrace authenticity, and develop healthy communication. This for me is getting really close to what it looks like for me. Here are some ways it says to show respect for your partner's autonomy. Communicate openly and honestly, support their interests, give them space. I need a lot of space. And the reason I need a lot of space is because I have a very deep inner world, expansive, and space is the only way that I'm able to connect with it and find my way back home. I love to connect with others. I do love to connect with others, but again, I said as an empath, that sheath disintegrates and you can get lost in others and their issues and their confusion. And my home for me is a peaceful place. It's a peaceful place. Compromise and negotiate, appreciate and acknowledge, respect yourself. And so for me, this is the best I've been able to find. And so it would require, for me, it means a relationship looks like some kind of collaboration with someone that is autonomous. Or autonomy. What? That someone who's interdependent and respects themselves. Someone who exercises their need for space. someone who's able to communicate openly and honestly, someone who's able to compromise. Compromise, tricky. Compromise is tricky for me. And I think compromise should be left right at the end after we have figured out whether we share values, because that came up in the beginning, whether we share values and whether we want the same things. I would like to continue on the journey of maintaining this feeling of home. I would like a space that is conducive to my expansion, my continued expansion. And I would like a space where, I don't know if I need to be able to discuss this expansion. You know, if you're not open to discuss that expansion with me, it's not going to be very expansive. You know, this topic actually scares me a lot. I'm just being completely honest. It scares me a lot. What it looks like to build with another human. What do they look like? You know? And that's what's left me sitting in my one spot, healing on my own, and waiting. But, you know, when you can hear it knocking. And so I think this discussion, I mean, it's coming to a close. And I'm going to close it off with a Rumi oracle, because who better to help us here? But it is something that I've decided, in order to show up authentically, I need to be honest about the fact that I have not figured this out. Because I feel like I've figured out a lot about life, a lot about how to get certain things for myself. At least the principles I'm learning, and I'm in a very peaceful place. I'm in a place of love. But I don't want to block this, because blocking it is actually possibly evidence of resistance. And if life wants to send me down a new path of growing in this area, blocking it, again, is resistance. Why am I resisting it? I'm resisting it because it's the unknown. Into the unknown. Oh, see? Frozen's coming up. I don't want to be frozen. I don't want to become frozen. I don't want to feel safer on my own. I don't want to only feel safe on my own. I don't want to only feel safe on my own. Yeah, let's ask Rumi. And I ask myself, am I the only one who's thinking about these things? I think that this is a valuable conversation even for someone who is already in a relationship. And this is not to say that relationship is unhealthy. This is to say, how do you, within relationship, how do you make room for more expansion? How do you communicate this need for your growth, while wanting to, not everyone throws an atomic bomb on their relationship to start afresh, Sometimes some people need to set a bomb on their relationship, and other times you've got to work with where you are, and you've got to find your way through. This is where compromise comes in, communication and all of that. And that's where we hope that your partner is open in the same way, because I think that there's a need to be able to work and improve on wherever you are to grow. Sometimes that's your path to expansion. And I think this conversation is worth having. I think few people are willing to even have this conversation, and I completely understand why. Sometimes I feel like I've taken my heart and I'm like hanging it on the washing line, outside in the commune. But actually, the truth of the matter is that these conversations are happening inside of us, and how are we going to progress beyond them? Just wearing sunscreen. Let's ask Rumi. It's always tricky. You see, the cards have a picture on one side and the writing on the other. So it's hard to know which side to shuffle if you don't want to see the cards. They're all different. They all have different artwork. They're the most beautiful cards. Stunning. So I use this and I try not to look so that, my choice can be random. The courage of your love. Here's the picture. It's got a couple standing there, sort of in a shadow, while they're kind of dialed out. And I've got what looks like a moon kind of shining on them, what they cannot see. It's also got all this beautiful artwork, which is hard to figure out, which is how I'm feeling. The courage of your love. Love is without reason. Rationality is like a cane. Judgment needs a cane because it is blind. When love arrives, thought dies in its shadow. Love is the sunrise, while thought is only a flashing light. Rumi. I do not bleat at you like a sheep, for to startle you from your slumber, I need to roar like a lion. You must awaken, my beloved. There is no time to waste, for the wolves are circling, hungry for sacred flesh. So I shall roar mightily, and although at first you recoil in fear, soon enough you will see the wolves. You become aware and grateful to have been thus awoken. Ah, yes, you remember that you have a precious human life to protect. You fear me no more. You thank me. You jump on my back as if you were a warrior astride a wild mountain. You roar then, along with me, awakening the others as we cause the ground to rumble, disturbing those even in their deepest slumber. You, like me, are a fierce lion, not a lamb to be led to so many slaughters. The variety of and opportunity for which is available in terrible abundance in our world. There is a Sufi story about a mother with her breast leaking milk. She loses her child, and once she finds him again, instantly lets him suckle for as long as he needs. A Sufi master nearby says to his students, "Do you think she would throw her baby into the fire?" And the students all say, "No, of course not." And the master replies, "Allah loves his children more than she, with enough tenderness to throw them into the fire." So it is with love. At first, as a young heart, you want only comfort for your beloved. You cannot bear the thought of pain within them, even for a moment. Your own suffering is easier than bearing the suffering of your beloved. That young heart grows wise through experience. It becomes an elder, an ancient heart tempered by grace and rendered strong with compassion. This is the great heart that can hold the suffering of the world within it, and yet still find space for peace, for sweetness, for tenderness, and for rapture. This is the heart that shines with courageous love. It is willing to feel and bear all suffering without judgment, whilst gently holding it is the truth of what that suffering really is. The drying out of the mind, addicted to suffering. This drying out is a challenging and enduring process. The path of freeing the heart from the effects of a fearful mind is an initiation into great power. So many lapses will happen before the heart grows strong enough to overpower old patterns and surrender without condition or equivocation. When it is ready to surrender in such a way, the heart is free and allowed to simply be. Even in the mind then, finally freed from shackles and joyfully submitting to love, declares, "Let love be, in whatever way it shall be. I can bear it. I shall take refuge in it. I shall not turn away from it. I am that love." You are an ancient one with a heart older than the mountains. You are being asked to free yourself from the too small loves of the youthful heart and come to understand and accept the wisdom of your mature heart. Your mature heart is not cured with hardness or detachment, but with compassion and tenacious devotion to the cause that is most real and matters most, the quest for life of the human soul. Your ancient heart loves the soul and will roar like the lion of love the wolves that would casually devour it. So trust in the courage of your heart. You are not cruel. You are not hard. You are not careless. You are passion personified. You are the lion of love. So allow yourself to be the lion, not the lamb. Stand true in your own heart. Cause trouble, make noise, be proud and be mighty. Then rest. After all that savage divinity, rest and restore. For day after day you shall claim your holy land and refuse to give them up to less noble creatures. Though you survey their manipulations and attempts to claim power with compassion, you do not underestimate them or relax your vigilance. You shall not allow for even a moment that falsehood be vigilance. You shall not allow for even a moment that falsehood be accepted as truth in your heart. This oracle comes with particular guidance for you. You are not to give in to less than you are worth, or to the shaming stories of others of our culture that would cast your regal lion nature into the falsehood of beliefs that you have no choice or power. You are not to give in to the idea that you are a victim and it's a butterfly. You are not to give in to the idea that you are a victim and cannot free yourself from your suffering, or that you are less than any other. These are lies. These are petty deceptions so unworthy of you. Do not believe them. Roar at them until the weak glue holding them together melts under the fire of your holy breath, and they lie dismembered and powerless at your feet. Rumi's rough sometimes. Protective. Then intend that those bits and pieces in decay are lovingly returned to the Earth Mother, through whom they can be used to fertilize new life. This oracle comes with another message for you. You have a challenge before you, or that you are now moving through, but you have what is necessary to succeed and overcome it. No matter how long it has endured, or how big you have built that challenge up to be in your mind, no matter how unsolvable the issue appears to be, there is and shall be a victory beyond it, and it is imminent. This oracle has come to you to let you know you are empowered to succeed. You have what is required within to do it, and that the time for your victory is drawing near. So do not give up. Instead, do the sacred honoring ritual as needed, and when you feel so inclined, open your mouth and roar love from the very depths of your being. Create a sound of truth for yourself. In that sound, you will hear the mightiest one of all roaring along with you, saying, "Yes, love, I am with you," and together we claim divine victory. So we roar. How we roar. Sacred honoring ritual. Say aloud, I call on Rumi, Lion of Love, and my own wise higher self. I now choose to assert the dignity of my soul and the power of my heart. I release all lesser bonds based in fear and deception. I no longer need to hold on to these. I am ready for truth, and with unconditional love, I am supported, protected, and guided on my path to victory, held in guardianship by the unending power of love. So be it. If you feel the need to get down on all fours and roar a bit, do it, with relish. Then you have finished your honoring ritual. That was incredibly special for me to read, because it kind of feels validating in terms of this conversation that I'm having. Completely validated. I come out of that Rumi Oracle card, that guidebook message, I come out of it feeling like I shouldn't gaslight myself. I shouldn't start this process of dishonoring my needs to be able to survive in a relationship at all. I feel like I don't need to start playing with these subtle thoughts of needing to reduce my value and my, the reality of my perception and my intuition to fit. I don't. I carry on the way I am, and when I hear that lion roar inside of me, let it roar. Let it roar, let it guide me. I hope that this was helpful. I feel so much better. And my ear is like, The words I got here were, honor yourself. You are worthy. Sending you love.